John Lennon, a name that is immortalized in the history of music, art, and the fight for peace. As an icon of the legendary band, the Beatles, and an activist, he changed the world with his voice, words, and actions. But who was John Lennon? Let's get to know the life journey of the legend. John Winston Ono Lennon, a name that is familiar to our ears, a musician, poet, and peace activist, who has inspired millions of people around the world. Let's start the journey of tracing the life of a legend from his starting point, the colorful childhood in the port city of Liverpool. Liverpool, a port city in northern England, has a rich history and unique culture. This city has given birth to many talented musicians, including the Beatles. In the days of John Lennon's youth, Liverpool was a vibrant city, with busy dock views, historic buildings, and a vibrant nightlife. As a major port city, Liverpool is very busy with the loading and unloading of goods. The roar of ship engines and the cheers of sailors are an inseparable part of daily life in this city. Music has long been an integral part of Liverpool culture. Many pubs and nightclubs are places where musicians gather to showcase their talents. The Cavern Club, where the Beatles often performed, is one of the city's musical icons. The people of Liverpool have a strong sense of togetherness. This is reflected in the many music and arts communities that have developed in this city. John Lennon and his friends grew up in an environment that supported their creativity. American culture, especially rock and roll music, was very popular in Liverpool at that time. Elvis Presley and other American musicians inspired many young people, including John Lennon. John Lennon's life experiences in Liverpool greatly influenced the music he created with the Beatles. Their lyrics often describe everyday life in their hometown, such as the song Penny Lane, which tells the story of a street in Liverpool. Although much has changed since the Beatles' heyday, Liverpool remains a fascinating city to visit. There are many historical sites associated with the Beatles that you can visit, such as the Beatles Story Museum and Penny Lane. The city also has a vibrant nightlife, with many bars and music clubs offering a variety of music genres. Liverpool is a city with a rich musical history, and is the birthplace of one of the world's most influential bands, the Beatles. The city's vibrant atmosphere and strong music community inspired John Lennon and his friends to create timeless music. John Lennon's relationship with his parents, Alfred Lennon and Julia Lennon, was quite complex and full of dynamics. John's childhood was greatly influenced by the interaction, or lack thereof, with both of his parents. Alfred Lennon, a sailor, was often absent from John's life because of his work at sea. This left John without a consistent father figure by his side. When John was a child, his parents separated. Although there were several meetings after the separation, the relationship between John and his father remained emotionally distant. Alfred Lennon had a limited influence in John's life. John spent more time with his mother, and later with his aunt, Mimi. John had a very strong bond with his mother, Julia. Julia was a creative and free-spirited figure, and she introduced John to the world of music. Julia had a major influence in shaping John's personality and musical interests. She taught him how to play the banjo and instilled in him a love of music. John's separation from his mother due to her marriage to another man was quite traumatic for John. He felt a great loss of his mother figure. The instability in his family life made John grow into a rebellious person. He often sought attention and recognition through music and unconventional behavior. John's turbulent personal life became the inspiration for many of the songs he created with the Beatles. The lyrics of their songs often express feelings of loneliness, loss, and the search for identity. John's childhood experiences with his parents also influenced the way he raised his own son, Julian. Although he loved Julian very much, their relationship also had its ups and downs. John Lennon's relationship with his parents was one of the important factors that shaped his personality and his works. The absence of a father figure and the separation from his mother left a deep scar on John's heart. However, on the other hand, his relationship with his mother also provided great inspiration for his musical journey. Music became an escape for John Lennon for several main reasons. His turbulent and complex personal life made him seek refuge in the world of music. Here's a more detailed explanation. Music became a medium for John to express complex feelings and emotions. Through song lyrics, he could express anxiety, sadness, anger, and hope that were difficult to express with ordinary words. The world of music offered John an alternative reality, where he could forget the problems and pressures of everyday life. In the process of creating music, he could explore his imagination and find peace. Music also became a bridge for John to connect with others. His meaningful songs managed to touch the hearts of many people, and made them feel less alone in facing various life problems. Through music, John could voice his disagreement with various things that he considered unfair, such as war, social inequality, and hypocrisy. Music became a tool for John to rebel and challenge the status quo. John used music as a means to find himself. Through the creative process, he was able to explore various aspects of his personality and form a unique identity. Many of John Lennon's songs tell about his personal experiences, such as his relationship with his parents, love, and loss. For example, the song Mother expresses feelings of loneliness and the loss of a mother figure. John also created many songs that raised social issues, such as war and injustice. For example, the song Imagine describes a peaceful world without national and religious boundaries. John's collaboration with Yoko Ono in creating experimental music gave him the freedom to explore without limits and break away from mainstream music conventions. Music became an inseparable part of John Lennon's life. He used music as a tool to express himself, overcome problems, and connect with others. The meeting between John Lennon and Paul McCartney occurred in 1957 at a church event in Liverpool, England. At that time, John Lennon and his band, the Quarrymen, were performing. Paul McCartney, who was still a teenager at the time, was very impressed with the performance of John and his band. After the show was over, Paul dared to approach John and introduce himself. They were involved in a pleasant conversation about music. Paul, who also had a talent for playing guitar, was very enthusiastic about the rock and roll music played by the Quarrymen. This meeting was a turning point in the musical journey of the two talented teenagers. Paul then joined the Quarrymen as a rhythm guitarist. Not long after, Paul invited his friend, George Harrison, to join the band. The Quarrymen also experienced a change in formation. With the joining of Paul and George, the Quarrymen's music became more mature and diverse. They played regularly at events around Liverpool, performing covers of American musicians such as Elvis Presley and Chuck Berry, as well as some of their own compositions. The Quarrymen kept changing formations until they finally changed their name to the Beatles. The name Beatles was inspired by the name of the American band, Buddy Holly and the Crickets. This name change marked a new chapter in their musical journey. With their burning passion and incredible talent, the Beatles conquered the music world and became one of the most influential bands of all time. John and Paul had different but complementary personalities. John with his intelligent and provocative lyrics, while Paul with his beautiful melodies and harmonizing abilities. Their collaboration produced many timeless hit songs. Both had the same vision to create quality music and wanted to share their music with the world. The youthful and energetic spirit of John and Paul made them dare to take risks and explore various musical styles. The arrival of Paul and George brought a breath of fresh air to the Quarrymen. Their guitar playing skills and good songwriting skills made the band's music grow even more. Several drummer changes occurred before Ringo Starr finally joined. Ringo brought a more energetic drumming style that suited the Beatles' music. The band's name also changed several times, starting from the Quarrymen, then becoming Johnny and the Moondogs, the Beatles, and finally becoming the Beatles as we know them today. A music store entrepreneur named Brian Epstein saw great potential in the Beatles. He later became their manager and played an important role in turning the Beatles into a global phenomenon. Brian Epstein brought major changes to the Beatles' appearance, musical style, and promotional strategy. The experience of performing at nightclubs in Hamburg, Germany, became a maturation event for the Beatles. They had to play for hours every night, forcing them to continue practicing and developing their musical skills. After returning from Hamburg, the Beatles managed to get a recording contract with Parlophone Records. Their first single, Love Me Do, was released in 1962 and became a hit in England. The Beatles' appearances on popular British television shows, such as The Ed Sullivan Show, made them even more famous throughout the world. The Beatles were known for their high-quality music. They were able to create catchy songs, clever lyrics, and beautiful harmonies. The Beatles were not afraid to experiment with different musical styles. They continued to develop themselves and were never satisfied with what they had achieved. The Beatles had a very close relationship with their fans. They always tried to give the best for their fans. The important role of George Harrison and Ringo Starr in the Beatles. While John Lennon and Paul McCartney are often given the spotlight, the contributions of George and Ringo should not be overlooked. George was a pioneer in bringing Indian music into Western rock music. His interest in the sitar and other Indian instruments gave a unique flavor to the Beatles' music, especially on albums like Rubber Soul and Revolver. Songs like Norwegian Wood and Within You Without You are clear examples of the Indian influence in the Beatles' music. Apart from being a guitarist, George was also a talented songwriter. His songs like Something, If I Needed Someone, and While My Guitar Gently Weeps became big hits and showed his ability to create beautiful melodies and meaningful lyrics, George had a broad musical vision. He was not only stuck to one genre of music, but was also interested in various types of music, such as blues, country, and classical music. This made the Beatles' music even richer and more diverse. Ringo had a distinctive and simple drumming style. He did not use too many complicated drumming techniques, but focused more on feel and the right timing. Ringo's drumming style fit perfectly with the Beatles' music and contributed greatly to creating a distinctive sound. In addition to being a drummer, Ringo also had a distinctive voice and often contributed his vocals to several Beatles songs, such as Yellow Submarine and With a Little Help from My Friends. Ringo was known as a humorous and fun person. His cheerful personality helped maintain a good atmosphere in the band and contributed positively to the group's dynamics. The four members of the Beatles had excellent harmonizing abilities. Their voices complemented each other and created beautiful harmonies in their songs. The Beatles were a very collaborative band. The four members of the band gave each other input and creative ideas, resulting in innovative and original works. Although known as world music icons, the Beatles were also not free from various controversies. Use among the Beatles members became the media spotlight. This sparked controversy and public concern. Several statements by John Lennon that were considered insulting to certain religions and institutions sparked public anger. John Lennon's relationship with Yoko Ono was often the subject of gossip and debate. Many fans felt that Yoko Ono's presence disrupted the band's dynamics. The Beatles' breakup was a sad event for fans around the world. Some of the factors that caused the breakup of this legendary band include, over time, creative differences between the members became increasingly apparent. Each member had a different musical vision. The increasingly competitive music industry and high public demands made the members feel pressured. Personal problems such as divorce and drug use also affected the band's internal dynamics. The influence of the manager and the people around the band also played a role in the breakup of the Beatles. The process of the Beatles' dissolution took place gradually. Some important events that marked the end of the Beatles era were the death of their manager, Brian Epstein, was a big blow to the band. Brian Epstein was a very important figure in the success of the Beatles. The album, Let It Be, released in 1970, is considered a documentation of the band's breakup. This album shows the tension and conflict between the members. In 1970, John Lennon officially announced that he was leaving the Beatles. This forced the band to disband. Although the Beatles had split up, their musical legacy lived on and inspired generations to come. Each member took a different path in their musical careers after the breakup. Paul continued to be active in music and released a commercially successful solo album. He also toured the world regularly and collaborated with many other musicians. With his wife, Linda McCartney, he formed the band The Wings, which also achieved popularity. After the Beatles, John increasingly focused on music that was socially protestive and experimental. He formed the Plastic Ono Band with Yoko Ono. George also had a successful solo career, releasing albums such as All Things Must Pass. He joined the super band, the Traveling Wilburys, with other famous musicians. George further explored Indian music and produced albums inspired by Indian classical music. Ringo remained active as a drummer and released several solo albums. He formed the All-Star Band, which included other famous rock musicians. In addition to music, Ringo also tried his luck in acting. Although they have disbanded, the Beatles' influence on the music industry is still very much felt. The Beatles paved the way for musical experimentation and pushed the boundaries of music genres. They were very involved in the production process of their music, thus becoming pioneers in recording techniques and music production. The Beatles are also known as one of the first bands to make music videos. Their style of dress, lifestyle, and attitude became trendsetters for the younger generation. On December 8, 1980, the music world lost one of its brightest stars. John Lennon, one of the founders of the Beatles, was shot to death outside his apartment in the Dakota Building in New York City. The gunman was Mark David Chapman, an obsessed but mentally disturbed fan. Hours before the shooting, Chapman had managed to get John Lennon's autograph on the cover of his album, Double Fantasy. As Lennon and Yoko Ono were about to enter their apartment, Chapman pulled out a gun and shot Lennon 4 times. Lennon died on the way to the hospital. Although Chapman's exact motive is still debated, several theories have emerged. Some sources say Chapman was angry with Lennon's song lyrics, which he considered too judgmental. It has been suggested that Chapman wanted to be famous by killing a famous figure like John Lennon. Some experts believe that Chapman had a mental disorder, that led him to do such an extreme act. John Lennon's death was a major blow to the music world. Many fans and fellow musicians felt the loss of a truly inspiring figure. Despite his relatively young death, John Lennon's musical legacy and message of peace live on to this day. In honor of John Lennon, New York Central Park has a section called Strawberry Fields, named after a Beatles song. Despite his tragic death, John Lennon's passion for peace and love continues to inspire millions around the world. His songs like Imagine have become symbols of hope and change. John Lennon will always be remembered as one of the greatest music icons of all time. John Lennon is proof that music can change the world. He was an artist, a leader, and an imperfect human being, but he had a big dream for a better world. His legacy will always be remembered. Thank you.